I'd like to welcome Dan Kelly, President, CEO, and Chair of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, to our show. CFIB is the largest small business association in Canada with more than 95,000 members, advocating for small business with all levels of government, as well as providing advice, tools, and savings for its members. Dan has been with CFIB since 1994 and became president in 2012. In 2015, Power and Influence magazine named him as one of the top 100 most powerful and influential people in government and politics. Dan, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you.
Excellent, excellent. I thought we'd start off talking a bit about the state of small business. You know, obviously coming out of the pandemic, have these small businesses in Canada, and maybe more specifically in Ontario and Toronto, have they really come out of this pandemic fully, or are they still feeling the effects of what we just went through over the last few years?
You know, I'd love to sit and tell you that things are back to normal, but for so many small and medium-sized firms across the country, in our province, in our city, that's just not the case. At this stage, if you can believe it, fewer than 40% of small businesses feel that they have fully recovered from COVID and have sales back to normal levels. 60% of small firms do not have sales back to normal. And though many of those same firms, I think about 60% of them are carrying now COVID debt. On average, that's about $150,000 in fresh debt that they had to take on just to survive COVID. And then coming out of the pandemic, when we were supposed to be experiencing these boom times as we crawled out of our basements and then went and spent our brains out, that hasn't happened. In fact, with rising inflation, businesses are facing huge cost increases on every line of their budget. So it's a pretty awful scenario for so many businesses, especially as many are predicting that we're heading into a recession.
Yeah, those numbers are astounding. Is it more sector specific though? Like, are there industries obviously doing better than others? I would imagine perhaps maybe businesses in the travel industry might be faring a little bit better than some other businesses, or are you seeing this right across the board?
You know, the pressures are everywhere, particularly on the spending side of the equation because of the cost increases that businesses are facing. So even those businesses that have seen a more modest effect of COVID or have seen sales rebound, they're facing the cost increases and labor shortages that are causing them to have a long way back to profitability. But sectors like retail, hospitality, the service sector, arts and entertainment, travel and tourism, these sectors are way down, and you know, they've got such a long road just to get sales back to normal, let alone try to deal with the costs that they've inherited over the course of the past couple of years.
Yeah, you know, I get a chance to talk to a lot of small businesses. A lot of my clients are small business owners, and I guess what I've been hearing, I think it's changed a little bit over the last year. Coming into this year, I found they were saying a lot of the issues were around labor shortage, trying to get enough workers to fill the roles they had, especially in the restaurant area. Going to see some of my clients who own restaurants, they couldn't find people to wait on tables or work in the kitchen. Then that's, I guess, kind of mid-year that sort of changed a little bit. A lot of people now are talking more about inflation, higher interest rates. What do you think is, I guess, the main issue, or the most, I guess, the issue you're hearing most when you talk to small businesses? What are they saying is affecting their business most? Is it inflation and interest? Is it labor, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of those things. But debt is a huge issue that businesses are facing right now. As I said, the average small firm has had to take on $150,000 in new debt on top of what they might have already had just to get past the last couple of years. That debt is now exposed to much higher rates of interest if it is in the form of any kind of lending instrument. Some of it, fortunately, is in an interest-free CEBA loan, the Canada Emergency Business Account loan, but those are coming due next year. So businesses are really struggling to figure out how they're going to find a pathway back to profitability. And that, you know, I mean, there are many that think that profit is a dirty word, but remember, these are families behind these businesses who rely on the income from the business in order to pay their own bills. And so we need to make sure that they are put back on a solid pathway. But when we see government right now making it worse rather than better, that really creates just a vicious cycle. And we see at the end of this year, we have Canada pension plan premiums going up significantly, EI rates going up significantly. Next spring, carbon taxes going up again, liquor taxes going up again. All of these are taking further bites out of household incomes, out of business incomes, and making a bad problem even worse. This is the time when we need governments to say, okay, we're going to take a break from those things. Sadly, they're doubling down and going ahead.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You bring up government, and what do you think government, Bank of Canada, can do to help these businesses? Obviously, during the pandemic, they had these programs that are no longer available that many businesses tapped into. What do you think government, what role can they play to help these businesses? I know the Bank of Canada has talked about bringing inflation down, how that is so important, how it's eating into people's paychecks, et cetera. My comment to the Bank of Canada would be, well, at least they have jobs and they have paychecks. If they continue to raise interest rates, businesses will be forced to lay off people, and inflation will be eating into their lines of credit or their credit cards. So what do you think, I guess, government can do at this point to help these businesses?
Step one is not making it worse. And sadly, that's what governments have been doing, is making it worse through the tax hikes that I just discussed a second ago. So if they laid off that, pause those things for at least the time being, that would be of significant help. Second, there is really a concerted effort needed to try to reduce some of the debt that businesses are facing. That could be a further forgiveness of some of the CEBA loans. That would take some of the debt off of the books of businesses, allowing more of them to survive what we expect to be some lean months in the days ahead. The other thing, of course, is that we're not asking for further subsidies or a renewal of the programs that were there during COVID, but for goodness sakes, governments could in fact try to address some of the skills and labor shortages that we're facing right now. That means further immigration, freeing up more temporary foreign workers to come to Canada. They have, to their credit, done a couple of steps, like making foreign students eligible to work full time. That we think is good news, but a lot more is needed to try to supplement the Canadian labor force if we're going to have a hope of trying to capitalize on this. Look, right now we have businesses that are saying, okay, I think there's business enough for me to perhaps open a second location or reopen on Tuesday night, but I don't have the staff to do it, and therefore their business income is constricted as a result of that.
Yeah, for sure. I talk about supply side, right? Obviously, the inflation dynamic, demand chasing too little supply, and labor really is a crucial part of that. And that's why it baffles my mind how central banks, Federal Reserve in the US and Bank of Canada, continue to raise rates. They talk about how we need more supply, yet you continue to raise interest rates. I think that just takes away from the labor force, which you'll need to produce more supply.
Yeah.
And so I guess final question to you is, when you talk to all these businesses, are they talking about the big bad R word? Do businesses think we are already in a recession? Do they think we're headed for a recession? And what are they doing to prepare for perhaps a recession to come either at the end of this year or early 2023?
For so many small businesses, they'd love to think about what the next couple of years are going to bring, about whether it's a recession or not. For most of them, as I said, only 40% of them are back to normal sales. It feels like a recession to them for right now. And it has felt that way for 2.5 years. Remember, in this city, we locked down tons of businesses and restaurants and restaurants and gyms, for example, for 430 days. So the damage that took place over that period of time has not been washed through yet. And we believe that there are about 160 to 180,000 businesses that we expect to fold as a result of the damage that they have taken on during the pandemic. So that has not gone through the system at all. We're starting to see small business bankruptcies tick up, but we believe we're at the tip of the iceberg. So for many, it feels for them like we're in recessionary times right now and have been for some time.
Well, hopefully something can be done either at the government level, or perhaps the Bank of Canada starts to slow down this interest rate hike cycle sometime soon. Dan Kelly, President, CEO of CFIB, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon and giving us, I guess, the goods on state of small business in our country, our province, our city. Thank you so much for being with us.
Anytime.
Take care.